Space, the final frontier, and the next international battleground. Specifically, the next place where the US and China will be butting heads. Both nations are planning a slew of missions. The first target is an old one, the moon. The US and USSR already had a space race over it in the 1960s. The US came ahead by putting Neil Armstrong on the moon in 1969.
It's one small step for man, giant leap for mankind.
This was after they had lost out on the first person in space. The USSR had won that round with Yuri Gagarin. But the moon landing was NASA's crown jewel. Now the US is headed for a turf war on the lunar surface. Beijing is the challenger. It's conducting a host of lunar operations, the Chang'e missions. These have been on for a while. The first Chang'e mission took place in October 2007. But the real threat to US space dominance was in 2019, with the Chang'e 4 mission that landed on the far side of the moon. You see, the moon doesn't rotate like planet Earth. It's what's known as tidally locked. One half always faces the Earth, the other half faces away. That second half is the far side, and no one had landed anything there until the Chinese mission. Since then, China has come up with some ambitious proposals.
We will also build a moon-centered deep space internet comprising functions such as communication, navigation, remote sensing, etc. By doing so, we will be able to turn our Earth-centered space infrastructure into a moon-centered system that can be extended to a broader scope in the solar system. With the internet, the moon will have access to TV programs, games, and the Wi-Fi network, and astronauts will never get bored on the moon.
Wi-Fi on the moon. And how will it be powered? Nuclear power, apparently. China wants to build a moon base, which they're calling the International Lunar Research Station. Construction is set to begin in 2026. The first stage is scheduled to finish in 2028. That's when it'll start operating on nuclear power. Then come the astronauts.
By 2030, the Chinese people will definitely be able to set foot on the moon. That's not a problem.
China says the base will keep getting expanded till 2050, and it'll eventually serve as a launch pad for getting astronauts on Mars. It sounds quite utopian. Of course, they won't get to do all this without running into interference. American interference. NASA's Artemis program plans to get Americans back on the moon. The Artemis 3 mission wants to put astronauts on the lunar surface by December 2025. Where exactly? The same location that China wants to build its base in. It's at the moon's south pole. You can see how this sets the countries up for a clash. The US and China may not be able to work together for the betterment of mankind even if they want to. Why? Because in 2011, the US passed something called the Wolf Amendment. It explicitly prohibits NASA from collaborating with China directly. Add to that various commercial space laws brought about by multiple nations. You can see that the world is poised to fight over resources in space. Already, the divide is evident. Last month, NATO declared space an operational domain. This means it'll be treated like air, land, sea, and cyberspace. It'll be another area for NATO to militarize. Besides NATO partners, the US is collaborating with allies like Japan and South Korea too.
With CASA on the way, which is South Korea Space Agency, cooperation between CASA and NASA down the road will be the driving force behind forging a strong space alliance.
The US isn't alone, of course. China is working with Russia, the UAE, and Pakistan. There is some genuine scientific international collaboration, of course, and some nations like India have yet to pick sides. But broadly, the battle lines seem to have been drawn. In the coming years, the scramble for the moon and Mars seems unavoidable.